Good morning, everyone. Today is September 1st, 2023. I'm not sure what happened to July and August, but here we are. My name is Kristy Bird MaKieve, and I'm the CEO of Healthy Rural California. We are a sponsoring institution accredited by GME, and in the midst of launching our now newly accredited psychiatry residency to be centered in Chico, with the majority of our curriculum in Butte County. And that is our goal. That has been our intention since day one, and just trying to help build capacity in Butte County as well, in order to have as much of the residency program in Butte County as we possibly can. That is our goal. So I'm very excited today to share what a business agreement would look like for participating in this psychiatry residency. This will also be similar for family medicine. However, I want to be clear that the psychiatry residency, as it is planned now and in the foreseeable future, will be funded by teaching health center dollars. THC funds are from the federal government, and one of three buckets of funding. There's teaching health center funds, there's CMS reimbursement rates, and then there's the VA. The VA has its own GME funding. So that is why our psychiatry residency will be primarily funded from teaching health center funding, because the VA of Northern California has graciously agreed to be our primary hospital. So that means that the first year of the curriculum is going to be in Sacramento at Mather, and that primary site then is not a conflict of funding with the teaching health center funding. That will be noted in more detail in this discussion. And just a further note, the remainder of that first year of the 4-year curriculum for psychiatry will also be with UC Davis. A shout out to our friends there. And at the Woodland Clinic of Northern Valley Indian Health, Woodland being closer to Sacramento than Northern Valley Indian Health's Chico locations. They're a partner. Northern Valley Indian Health is our partner for the family medicine residency, and that is going to be located in Chico. Okay, so the business agreement is, in essence, is because Healthy Rural California will be the employer of the residents. Now, these are MD-DOs. They are doctors. And the curriculum of the psychiatry residency and any other residency is for their learning. It is a requirement of becoming board certified, and there are needs to have a certain number of hours for psychiatry. I understand that it's about 8,000 hours worth of practicum, for example. But they're also serving a role in seeing the patients of the clinics, especially in years 2, 3, and 4 of psychiatry. So then the partners, the clinical partners, can also then bill for the residents' time, but not for their time. It is through their preceptor. The attending physician would then bill for that, the 2 patients being seen at the same time, or the resident seeing the patients. The residents cannot bill. That's a whole other, that's how financial revenue goes to the clinical partners, is a different discussion. This is simply the agreement that Healthy Rural California will need from all of our clinical partners, because we will be sending our residents to serve your patients and to learn from your physician faculty. So here we have, basically describing, I put Butte County Department of Behavioral Health in here because we are discussing with them how to expand the capacity of our curriculum based on their recent expansion of capacity. They've hired a medical director and a child and adolescent psychiatrist. We're very excited. We're looking at different sites throughout Butte County now that we are at that point of really finalizing the curriculum. since we got accredited in February. So this is, basically saying, and to note that our residency program is a community psychiatry residency. Healthy Rural California is not a clinic, so we're a nonprofit consortium model. And that means that all of our clinical partners, we have 7 currently. For the first 3 years of the curriculum, we're still finalizing the electives. We have some really great electives lined up, but we'll also have to do business agreements and program letters of agreement for those as well. So Butte County Behavioral Health is one of our clinical partners, possibly going to be the full 3 years continuity clinic plus some other rotations. Where our goal, just so everybody knows, our goal is that we have these all done, fully executed agreements, updated program letters of agreement, which require us to list the faculty who must be board certified in psychiatry. And then for child and adolescent, any rotations focused on child and adolescent must be child and adolescent board certified psychiatrists. That's not to say that just psychiatrists can teach the residents. There's a lot of nuance. For example, with the Northern Valley Indian Health rotation in Woodland, that is with a board certified family medicine physician for the family medicine rotation. There's a lot of experiences that our future medical students and residents want to also be a part of, and those might be psychologists or other therapists that are at that clinic. And so all of that is good. But when you have the physician faculty listed as faculty and core faculty, they must be board certified. Okay, so Healthy Rural California is administering the residency program, employs the residents, and the program director and other program staff. That includes our program coordinator, Lena. So that's our role. And then the participant operates a clinic that has agreed to serve as a clinical training rotation site for the residents. So when you have, when you go down into section 1, we're really looking at defining that, I just want to scroll without losing that paragraph. Okay. So the clinical facilities, the participants will be providing adequate, appropriate space, as well as the equipment, supplies, and support services necessary for the training of the residents. The clinical partners must train on their specific EHR, and in our psychiatry residency, there's quite a number of different EHRs that are used. That's totally fine, but it's incumbent on the clinical partner to train those residents. There are facility requirements. Residents must have their own workstation. For psychiatry to meet with patients, they must be having their own room. And so it's not like you have to build a whole new building for the residents, but you have to be able to prove to Healthy Rural California so that we can meet ACGME's requirements that you're providing that space for them. And then the chain of command on concerns about resource utilization. One thing that does come up with residents is lactation rooms. That's just one example, but oftentimes residents are at that period in their lives where they're having children and starting their families, and they come into the clinical facilities and need to know that they have a place to store their breast milk and also have privacy. So it's just one of those things that, you don't really often think about unless you have the residents on board. And then, so it's good to talk about all of these things in advance. So we will, HRC, provide all of our clinical partners a list of the rotating residents and what level they are at, PGY level. And then we will be notifying those participants as well of any changes in the residence schedule. As I mentioned earlier, residents are, might have a family, and their changes, their schedules may change just depending on different needs. And we will be working with residents who have only progressed through their milestones. That is our commitment to our clinical partners, that they will be background checked and everything, background checks, so that all of our clinical partners can rest assured that our residents are coming into their facilities with all of their requirements checked. Educational goals, of course, are also linked to the program letters of agreement, and those are always going to be focused on if the resident is assigned to be at a certain rotation at that clinical facility, then the goals and objectives need to be aligned with that particular rotation. We will be working with all of our faculty and the site directors at all of our partners' facilities to make sure that they understand those goals and objectives, and then helping them understand how to track whether the residents are meeting their milestones. That's part of the education agreement. So Healthy Rural California has the final authority and control over the residency program, and that is because we are the accredited sponsoring institution, as well as the one having accreditation from ACGME for the psychiatry residency and any of our specialty residencies. And so that this spells out what that means. And yes, we will be trained on how to use MedHub. Again, that's what Healthy Rural California is purchasing to maintain all of our faculty and resident rotations. And then we'll be doing the selection committee with the program director in the lead role of that selection committee of all of the residents each year. It's actually quite a lot of work. We're anticipating 400 applications for the psychiatry residency between September 15th, 16th, maybe the 17th, when most of the fourth year medical students are submitting their applications through ERAS. And then we will be looking to interview about 40 of those applicants, 10 per 4 of our cohort slots positions. So the precepting faculty is also defined here, and we do need to have an updated list of all of the clinicians who are approved to serve as residency program faculty, and will have the responsibility of teaching the residents. And so that is our promise to ACGME, that we will be maintaining that. So we will just be in constant communication, basically. And at bare minimum, we'll have an annual review, typically in the August, September, October timeframe, where we'll review all of these things, and update the business agreement, the program letters of agreement, review the business agreements, and because there's some key points that need to be made, and just reminding folks. And so we hope to have stipends for our faculty. As it stands right now with teaching health center funding, I don't think we can afford that. But as this states, we hope to be able to support the faculty, especially when they're doing their training and non-clinical time, and other activities. Excuse me. Okay. So your clinical facility and your healthcare policies are also important. And as the resident's employer, Healthy Rural California shall instruct each resident that when furnishing services to our clinical partners' patients, they must provide care in compliance with their healthcare policies. And so I want us all to be mindful that our residents will be rotating at 7 different clinical facilities, and that we all need to be aware and making sure that the residents are oriented properly. And then policies and procedures will be followed, and the program director responsible with providing all of our policies. And we do want to make sure if a clinical partner is going to sign one of our business agreements, that you understand what those policies are. There are things like for psychiatry, we have a maximum number of hours that the residents can work, and that is driven by our goal, which is also ACGME's goal of making sure that our residents are well and healthy. There are discipline and supervision guidelines in this as well. And there is an agreement between our clinical partners and Healthy Rural California, so such that if a resident is suspended or that a clinical facility has requested that a resident not come back, that we will work together to make sure that is followed. Again, it's cooperation. And so there's the lead faculty, site directors, all of those very clear roles, so that we know how to work together and who to work with when there are problems. And I'm not going to say our residents are going to have problems with our clinical facilities or vice versa, but it does happen. And so we just need to be aware and prepared. And that's what this business agreement goes through. So again, 1.8 talks about how we're the employer of the residents and that we are going to be responsible for paying for the residents' salaries, benefits, and related expenses. Healthy Rural California will be getting teaching health center funding. And so that is, that's the plan. And we think in the first year or two, it would be good if our clinical partners could provide us with additional financial support. If you think about it, the residents are going to be, we will be getting $160,000 per resident per year from teaching health center funding. And so when you only have 4, the first cohort, first year, it's not a ton of money to support all that we have to do. And then each year, 4 more will be added until we're at a steady state of 16 residents in the program. And we have calculated and done projections. We've worked with Morrison and Company to do this a year ago. And we know that at 16 residents we'll be okay, but it's these first launch years that if there is some financial support from our clinical partners, it would help us make sure we are successfully launching. So we'll be working, we have payroll at Healthy Rural California. We will also have space. We have a conference room already that is big enough that could hold the residents and some faculty and doing didactics on a weekly basis, which is required. And then the participant, our clinical partners, will need to provide the space, equipment, and supplies necessary for the resident to be a physician. It's very much like having a physician added to your clinic. So 1.10 is that we are, Healthy Rural California, going to be funded by teaching health center dollars. And that means that you as a participant in the program will not seek other federal or state GME funding, including Medicare GME, in a matter that is, no double counting of resident time. Again, that you can have the preceptor's time, but not the resident's time. We will be working with MedHub, and that will help us calculate residents' time and anything that would then correlate with our different clinical partners, and then just sort of how you can read this part about Medicare, Medi-Cal, payer contracts, and accreditation cooperation, where did it go? 1.12. In the event that the ACGME should request information, we are then, Healthy Road California, obligated to provide that information to ACGME. It doesn't happen often, but we have to be honest and transparent. And if there are issues, or ACGME does an audit or site visit, which I think is every 10 years, they might need to come into your facility, and that we would just ask for that cooperation of our clinical partners. And then there's disqualified persons, what that means, financial or other support for the program. Again, I mentioned just a little bit ago that we would like some financial support from our partners. And so that's part of the dialogue that we're going to have with everybody in the next few weeks. Insurance. These are requirements of our clinical partners. I think they're fairly normal when you have a physician on your premises. And then we at HRC will also have malpractice insurance in terms of the learners. The residents will be covered through Healthy Road California, and the malpractice insurance that we get to those limits as well. Indemnification, pretty, I think, basic stuff. So when you talk about the terms, I want to just discuss, I mean, they're pretty straightforward. It said minimum of 3 years. And the reason being is that we are providing a curriculum. For psychiatry, it's 4 years, and it's possible that the resident might stop a year early. Maybe they've done their hours and they've gotten a job and left. But for all intents and purposes, it's a 4-year curriculum. And therefore, we really need to have our clinical partners committed for the long term. And if you put yourselves in the residents' shoes, what they're doing is agreeing to come to our community and be this resident and learn. And they want to know that over the 4 years of the curriculum, who our clinical partners are. Medical records, confidentiality, HIPAA, compliance with laws. It's pretty much straightforward. Signing off, and then privacy. So the rest of this literally is pages about HIPAA, that any agreement between having a provider going to a clinical facility would need to sign. So I'm gonna sign off on that for now, and say that I'm continuing to have these conversations. This is our first year of doing business agreements. Again, we anticipate recruiting many applicants to the program, and then we'll be having our match day on March 15th, 2024. And so as we're interviewing these residents, we want to be confident that our clinical partners who have agreed to take the residents are actually understanding these terms and signing off on the business agreements, and then updating the program letters of agreement. Again, always happy to discuss, share more information. I will not be emailing business agreement templates. It's just not something that I feel comfortable doing. So I hope that we can sit down in person and discuss this in greater detail. I'm not going to ask anybody to sign without having the chance to review the business agreement with their lawyers or other folks on the clinical partner side. I'm not trying to spring a trap on anybody, but I also don't want to have multiple copies of our business agreement circulating through email. And I hope that you can respect our needs to protect our intellectual capital and the money that we've been paying for a lawyer to support us. Our lawyer is also available to have these discussions with any of your folks. His name is Michael Goldie, and he has a lot of experience in graduate medical education. One last note is that yesterday our team was looking at the application for teaching health center funding, and it's very clear that we have to show all of our clinical partners' business agreements so that the federal government knows that they're giving us teaching health center funding, and then our clinical partners aren't going to double dip and try to get other funding for the residents because we're getting teaching health center funding at Healthy Rural California. So I actually have to have these business agreements in place in order to apply for the teaching health center funding. And so that's why we are on a focused effort to have all of our discussions and have these business agreements signed no later than November 10th, which actually might be past the deadline for the teaching health center funding grants. But again, the federal government has not released that yet for our cohort of applications for teaching health center funding. So we're just trying to line it all up. I'm always here to answer questions and keep educating and informing. And thank everyone for trying to do this really new and innovative big thing. It's right for the community. It's right for Butte County. And it's exciting to see the increased capacity and then the attempts to increase capacity even more. And then the interest in having our residents rotate at the different facilities. It's very exciting. Thank you so much.